all sifting through the offers that are on the board from aggressive teams. You're talking about the Warriors, the Heat, the Timberwolves, the Knicks. Pick-heavy offers, player-centric offers, combination of both when you think about a team like Miami. But the question around the entire NBA, the landscape-changing question is, will the Bucks deal Giannis now or wait for the offseason? Giannis is prepared and ready to exit Milwaukee, whether it's now or in the offseason. Then Anthony Davis. The Mavericks' phone lines remain open on AD, even though he's out right now with a hand injury. Toronto and Atlanta have been two teams that have had interest over the course of the year. It remains to be seen whether either team can really cobble up the financial relief, the package of picks and young players to get a deal done. Could this be an opportunity to buy low potentially for a guy like AD? And then James Harden. This is really the stunning development of trade deadline week. He and the Clippers are working toward a trade out of LA. After multiple days of conversations about his long-term future, the consensus was there was not going to be a promise beyond this season. The Cleveland Cavaliers have emerged as a serious suitor for him. The sides are discussing a potential swap around Harden and Garland. James Harden, from my understanding, he wants a chance to compete for a championship. He sees that potentially in Cleveland.
Those are some big names. And you get the sense maybe it's a little busier than normal on a Tuesday before the deadline?
Usually this flurry of moves takes Wednesday, Thursday. Teams are getting to the action on Tuesday. We'll see what more. I have a feeling there's going to be more as the next 12 to 16 hours go on.
Okay, there you go. Sham's a very busy man as we...
So despite saying just a month ago he would never ask for a trade from Milwaukee, he's now the biggest name in the trade rumors. What team do you see as the best fit?
Yeah, I've been calling it a trade suggestion, not a trade demand. He won't actually ask, but if you wanted to do it, for now, I'm going with the Miami Heat. The Minnesota Timberwolves are starting to scare me a little bit on that prediction. But as far as a two-team trade goes, a trade where the team doesn't need to go out and find help like Minnesota does, I think Miami has the most balanced package. You're talking about 2 first-round picks, potentially 3 first-round swaps. Tyler Hero, Wisconsin native. Khalil Ware, promising, younger big man, very skilled, very athletic, somebody who the Bucks could look at and say, maybe in a few years he has a chance to compete for an all-star berth. It's going to be tough. You're going to have to give up a lot of depth. Andrew Wiggins might be in that trade. You might have to go out and get more picks somewhere else that way. But you pair Bam Adebayo and Giannis Antetokounmpo, you're talking about maybe the best defensive front court in the NBA. You'd have Davion Mitchell for your defensive backcourt. First-time All-Star Norm Powell giving you that perimeter scoring punch. Miami always good at finding depth. If you want a complete team, a team that's not going to have to totally gut itself to get Giannis, I think Miami is probably your best bet.
Giannis from Milwaukee to Miami. Very different culture change, very different vibe change for him. And of course, whoever gets Giannis averaging 28 and 10 right now is certainly going to win big there. Another major name in the headlines is Ja Morant, Sam. He's been with Memphis, as we know, since they drafted him number 2 overall in 2019. One team that's been very vocal about wanting him is the Kings, but Ja has made it clear he doesn't think Sacramento is a good fit. So what team in your mind is a good fit for him?
Yeah, hear me out. I know we just talked about the Miami Heat. I don't think they're going to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo and Ja Morant. But if somebody else gets Giannis Antetokounmpo, then I think the Heat could turn around and say, you know what? We need the upside play. Obviously our offense has kind of declined as the season's progressed. We feel good about our culture. We think we can bring Ja in, get his head on straight, maybe keep him healthier here than he's been in Memphis, and get the most out of him, maybe get him back to that All-NBA level. You could probably do a pretty straightforward trade involving Tyler Hero, maybe do something with Terry Rozier's money. I think this is a pretty straightforward trade because Ja Morant right now just doesn't have the trade value to command, several first-round picks in a trade. You're probably looking at matching salary. If I'm Miami, I look at my team right now and I say there is not enough upside here. There's not enough raw talent here to make a deep run in the playoffs. Do I know that Ja Morant is going to be good enough to win you the East? No, there's obviously a lot of risk attached to him. But if you're the Heat, you say to yourselves, we have such a good track record of getting the most out of our players. If we can get Ja Morant in here, maybe we are the team that brings back the guy that was making All-NBA teams in the past, making All-Star teams in the past, get him back up to full strength, and now we have that superstar that we need.
and make their way up the East. I feel like if you're a Miami fan and you're watching this show, we just talked about Ja or Giannis being the two possible options. I'm sure they're happy to hear those two names. On Monday, we heard Shams report that the Clippers and James Harden are working through some trade options, plural. The Cavs have been the one team with the most interest we've heard about. They are the only team, though, in the NBA over the second apron, so they're likely going to need to send a big piece of their own for this trade. It sounds like a possible swap for point guard Darius Garland. How do you like Harden in Cleveland?
Yeah, I think at the very least, James Harden does make the Cavaliers better this year. When you're talking about trading for a player who's a decade older than the guy you're giving away, that does present some long-term questions, at least in the short term. Darius Garland's durability had become a major problem, right? He hadn't played 70 games in a season until last year. And then last year in the playoffs, he hurts his toe, and he's not the same guy. That toe injury's been a problem for him all season. He hasn't played since January 14th. James Harden, for all of his foibles, tends to be healthy. You put him on the Cavs. That's the secondary scorer, secondary playmaker that you need next to Donovan Mitchell. He can't carry the offense by himself. James Harden is a big man's best friend. It's not been a great offensive showing for Evan Mobley this year, has not been a great offensive showing for Jarrett Allen. James Harden could get them all the easy shots near the rim that they could imagine. So, look, would you have some defensive questions there? Sure. James Harden, not a great defender. Well, Darius Garland isn't either. You're trading a young guy for an old guy. There's risk baked into that. But if you're just asking what gives us the best chance to win the championship this year, I think James Harden is better for them than Darius Garland.
And as we've seen, when he asks for a trade, he gets it. Houston, Brooklyn, Philly. This would be the fourth. Last on the list is Anthony Davis, who was part of that massive Luka trade just a season ago. He's in the midst of another injury-riddled season. You just talked about the other guy not having injuries. This is a guy with injuries year after year. His agent, Rich Paul, has said it's his best interest to be traded, but AD has come out and said, I didn't say that, my agent's saying that. So, Sam, what landing spot do you see as the best fit for him?
Well, the best fit for Anthony Davis is the team that's going to extend him. I don't know if there's a team out there that's willing to do that. I will point out, though, the Toronto Raptors made the, let's say, somewhat irrational, somewhat regrettable decision last offseason to give Jakob Poeltl a long-term extension when he had 2 years left on his deal. How many years does Anthony Davis have left on his contract? 2 years. Now, nobody wanted to take Jakob Poeltl. That was a big hurdle for the Raptors as they tried to trade for an all-star at this year's deadline. The Memphis Grizzlies, having just traded Jaren Jackson Jr., open up this big $28 million trade exception. Now we have a team that might be willing to take on that contract, and if we can get Jakob Poeltl's contract out of the way, now there's a pretty straightforward trade you can make with Dallas. Maybe you send out an R.J. Barrett as well, give some draft capital, some to the Mavericks, but some to the Grizzlies for taking on that contract, and you get the big-name big man that they've been looking for in the building. Obviously, a great defender would fit in great on that side of the court. They've tried to trade for Domantas Sabonis. The Poeltl contract has been an obstacle there. Sabonis better on offense, Davis better on defense. The Raptors have tended as an organization to prioritize defense. So if there is a path to getting off of that Poeltl contract and getting Davis in the door, I do think that could make some sense for the Raptors moving forward.
How many hours do you sleep in the next 48 hours, Sam?
We measure that in minutes, not hours.
Screen time? It's going to be a busy next few hours for you, Sam. We appreciate you for being our matchmaker. We're going to get to some NBA games after the break. You see the Nuggets Pistons there.
In the NBA, the Jazz have landed Jaren Jackson Jr. from the Grizzlies, with Memphis landing 3 future first-round picks in the process. That's according to multiple reports. Also going to Utah, John Conchar, Jacques Landale, and Vince Williams Jr. Now, the Grizzlies are getting 2025 first-round pick Walter Clayton Jr., Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, and George Niang. But the real prize in Memphis are the 3 first-rounders, giving the Grizzlies a 13 first-round selection over the next 7 seasons. All right, so let's break down what this all means as we're just getting started in terms of things we might see as that trade deadline is approaching. We have Sam Quinn and Ashley Nicole Moss. Jaren Jackson Jr., he is going to Utah. Ashley, your initial reaction when this news came down?
Well, Utah took me by surprise. But taking that out of the equation, I mean, when you look at this trade and what Jaren Jackson is going for, Jaren Jackson Jr. went for, rather, excuse me, you have to wonder, with the name Giannis floating around, if Jaren Jackson Jr. goes for 3 first-round picks, Milwaukee is going to want the house for Giannis. They just completely reset this trade market. And now Milwaukee's like, oh, that's what he got? All right, we're going to make that that mental note moving forward. But I think that when you look at the Grizzlies specifically and what they received, I know you like this guy, Walter Clayton Jr.
I love him.
The Grizzlies do really well with developing young talent. It's a good spot for a young player to go to. I don't know. I'd be curious to see what Jaren Jackson Jr. feels about going to Utah. But I will say this, I don't hate what they have. Now, the real question is now, because, and I'll let Sam kind of dive into this a little bit more, the Grizzlies created a massive amount in trade exception money, like almost $29 million. You have to wonder, you moved one part of your young core in Triple J. Now you're starting to wonder, all right, is Ja Morant the next domino to fall?
Yep.
It may be a selling fire in Memphis right now.
Yeah, that trade exception is the biggest trade exception in the NBA by a mile. It was $18 million before this. Now the Grizzlies looking around $29 million to trade with now at the deadline. I like this for both sides. Like Ashley said, the Grizzlies, one of the best draft and develop teams in the NBA. You give them 13 first-round picks over 7 years. They're not only going to draft good players, I think they're going to be aggressive on draft night. We saw last year they trade up from 16 to 11, get Cedric Coward. That pick, it looks like a home run right now. I think having this extra ammunition is going to give them the tools they need to go target the guys they like and rebuild this thing slowly and properly. As far as Utah goes, it feels a little bit aggressive given where they are in the standings. But remember, they've been in the tank for 4 years. It's time. They have to start winning. I have some questions about the lineup because you have Walker Kessler, who's out for the year this year. Very good defensive center. You presume he'll be back in restricted free agency. You have Lauri Markkanen. You have Ace Bailey. That's a lot of size, a lot of forwards, a lot of bigs. I wonder, are you going to play Ace Bailey at the 2? Is there a follow-up here? But with Keontae George breaking out at point guard, they have a great young coach in Will Hardy. They have a top 8 protected pick. They owe the Thunder. My big question for the rest of the year for the Jazz, are you going to be able to lose enough games with Jaren Jackson on your team that you're going to be able to keep that pick and not hand the Thunder the number 9 overall pick? If you can, I like what they're building moving forward. It was time to start winning. Now, going into next year, you'd expect the Jazz to be a pretty competitive team in the West.
Now, Ashley, you alluded to it, and I think that's what we're all thinking because I initially heard Memphis trade, and so my brain went to Ja Morant originally, right? So, Sam, I'll come to you first on this one. What does this mean for Ja Morant? Is it a fire sale? Is this the start of it, the first domino to fall? What do you think?
If they can trade Ja Morant, I suspect they will. The problem that we've had throughout this entire trade deadline cycle, there is not a lot of interest for small guards. I think that's especially true of Ja Morant because he's not a three-point shooter. He's not a defender. He's a tricky fit on most teams because he has to have the ball in his hands all the time. And if he's not getting to the basket at an elite rate anymore, I'm not sure what the value proposition of having Ja Morant on a max contract looks like. If there is a trade out there, even if it's something like the Trae Young trade where they were getting, just a cap dump, it was Corey Kispert and expiring money and CJ McCollum, I think the Grizzlies would take it. They've gotten enough value for Jaren Jackson and for Desmond Bane over the summer that I don't think they need to pretend that the league is all that interested in trading for Ja Morant. Get him off of the team, focus on the tank, develop these young guys, and just turn the page on this era of Grizzlies basketball.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the course has run its course, with Ja Morant in Memphis. And I think we've been talking about this for a while, and it's very unfortunate because when you think about the Memphis Grizzlies, at one point we were talking about them becoming the next face or one of the faces of the Western Conference in the changing of the guard. One thing has led into another. If it's not off the court activities, it's the injuries to Ja Morant, which is a direct domino effect to the rest of the team. But you make a trade like this, there's a lot of potential for the future. I have a hard time believing that future is going to include Ja Morant because, again, like Sam's saying, you have so much opportunity to kind of start from scratch. And the Memphis that can do it, they done it. They did it with Ja Morant. They did it with Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane when they were all together. So this is not something that is abnormal for them. I just don't see with what they have and what they're able to create with what they have, I don't see a future in where Ja Morant falls into that. So the real question is where can you trade him to That's going to be the thing that we're watching over the next few days. But I just don't see a world where you're going to mesh the old with the new. I think that the Grizzlies made this move and are going to continue making moves that allow them to kind of start fresh.
Okay, and whenever we get a trade, we got to grade it, right? So Jaren Jackson Jr. going to Utah, Memphis getting 3 first-round picks in the process. Ashley, grade it for both sides.
I'm going to go with a B just because obviously Utah still has a lot to prove. On paper, there's a lot of promise with what they have and what they'll be able to look like down the road, but we're still talking about the Utah Jazz, and in the Western Conference, they're a non-factor. They have been a non-factor. And I think from a developmental standpoint, the Grizzlies got a lot, and if what they're looking to do and what it looks like they're looking to do is restart, this is a great opportunity for them to do just that. So I'm only giving it a B because the Utah Jazz are still not going to be competitive. It's not going to be an immediate impact. And there are still a lot of other things that have to fall into place to make sure they're in the position to be just that next season.
Okay.
Yeah, for Utah, I'm thinking of B. It's a risk, right? It's just hard to get talented all-star players like Jaren Jackson to come to Utah, so you have to pay a substantial draft package to get guys like that. They want to win next year. I think they're going to go into next season probably not one of the favorites in the West, obviously. We're talking about a lottery team, but a team that has a lot more upside, a lot of room to grow. I think they can make the playoffs next year and have upside beyond that if Ace Bailey develops, if your lottery pick this year turns out to be a hit. I feel broadly pretty good about where Utah is. I'm giving Memphis a B as well. My big question here is, what are these picks that they're getting? They're very, very risky picks. So next year, the Jazz are giving up their own pick, or rather the best of all the picks they have, but functionally, probably their own pick. Is that going to be good? Well, they just got Jaren Jackson, so probably not as good as it maybe looked a week ago. And the other crown jewel of this trade, an unprotected 2031 pick from the Phoenix Suns. Last year, that was one of the best picks that was traded at the entire deadline cycle. Phoenix looks a lot better right now with Devin Booker obviously making the All-Star team, Dylan Brooks changing the culture. 5 years is a long time. Just because the Suns look good right now doesn't mean they're set up to be good in 5 years. That might be a great pick. It might be a mediocre pick. It's all going to depend on where those picks land. But given how well the Grizzlies draft and develop, I feel good about their ability to use them.
All right, so we're handing out Bs across the board. Yeah. Ashley, Sam, we certainly appreciate it joining us for that breaking news here out of the NBA as we were just a few days out from that trade deadline. The Jazz getting Jaren Jackson Jr. from the Grizzlies. You see the full trade details lined out here. Memphis landing 3 future first-round